Well, g'day curd nerds. Today we're making Yesterdaze cheese. So Yesterdaze is a cheese made, well, the recipe was created by Tracey Johnson of cheeseneeds.com, and it's got a bit of a blurb on the top of the recipe. I'll just read it out for you. So Yesterdaze Cheese by Tracey Johnson. I am often asked, which cheese should I start with? What is beginner friendly and reliable? I started thinking about the farmers' cheeses they made in the small crofts of Scotland out of necessity when they had to be low maintenance and ready to eat or trade fast. I've been experimenting with this recipe and here it is, a cheese you do not have to do a lot of babysitting with and can eat on day 2 that actually tastes like cheese. So, it's a very simple, well, it's not really hard Italian style. It's a simple cow's milk cheese that's made with a thermophilic culture. And as the name suggests, Yesterdaze, you can eat it. It's Yesterdaze cheese. Get it? Nice. I like it. Nice play on words. So, with some small modifications, let me show you how I made Yesterdaze cheese. So don't forget to sanitize all your equipment, and I put it on a nice clean tea towel there. So the ingredients for Yesterday's cheese, it's 5 litres or 1.3 gallons of cow's milk. I'm using pasteurised unhomogenised. 1/8 of a teaspoon of lipase, that can be calf or kid, diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. 1/16 of a teaspoon of MOT92 thermophilic culture or alpine. 1/2 teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of calcium chloride diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. 1/2 teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of single strength liquid rennet. I'm using IMCU 200. That can be diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. And you'll need a cool 18% brine solution. So pop your milk into the pot and heat the milk to 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. See, I'm using a precision cooker there as a water bath, and I have the pot on a trivet and heating it up to temperature. So once the milk's up to temperature, I'm going to add the lipase solution. So pour that in, give it a good stir. Now I'm going to add the calcium chloride, which adds more soluble calcium back to the milk and helps it set a better curd. I only do this when I'm using pasteurised milk. So after a quick stir, we're now going to add the starter culture, the thermophilic culture. Sprinkle that over the surface of the milk. Then pop the lid back on and allow that to rehydrate for 5 minutes. So once that's rehydrated, we're going to stir the culture into the milk. Just stir it so it's well mixed. And now I'm going to add the rennet. Now there's no ripening time for this cheese. It ripens as it goes along, so stir for no more than 1 minute. Pop the lid back on, and we're going to allow the curds to set for 60 minutes. So 60 minutes later, we're going to check for a clean break. Let's pop your curd knife in, give it a twist, pull it up, and if it's a nice clean split, then it's ready to go. So we're going to cut the curds into 2.5 centimetre or 1 inch cubes. I'm using my curd harp there for the horizontals and my curd knife for the vertical cuts. Trying to get the cubes as evenly spaced as I can. So pop the lid back on. Now we're going to allow the curds to rest for 90 minutes. So after the curds have rested for 90 minutes, you'll see a lot of whey on top there. So we're going to gently separate the curds. And we're going to increase the temperature now to 53 degrees Celsius or 127.4 Fahrenheit over the period of 30 minutes and stir occasionally to prevent the curds from matting together. So 30 minutes later, the new temperature will be 53 Celsius. A little bit lower than it should be, but that's okay. Close enough. And you'll see that the curd size, it's roughly the size of a fava bean, or broad bean as we call them here in Australia. So remove the heat. So I'm just taking away my precision cooker and taking the water out of the water bath. Just removing everything there. Now we're going to transfer the curds into a cheesecloth lined colander. I'm using a loose weave cheesecloth there. And transfer the curds and drain them. So we're going to allow that to drain for 3 minutes. So 3 minutes later, we just bundle up the curds in the cheesecloth, transfer it to the basket. I'm using a 150ml basket there. I'm just pushing the curds down so they're all flat. And we're going to fold the cloth over the cheese, put the follower on top, and now we're going to press the cheese for 30 minutes at 2.5 kilograms or 5 pounds. So a very light first pressing. So remove the cheese from the press and remove the cheese from the basket. Now be very gentle because this was a very warm curds. They have a tendency to stick to cheesecloth. So just be careful when you're turning it over. Just peel it off gently. Now one way to prevent this sticking, and I did do this before, was to spray the cheesecloth with white vinegar. You can see the trigger bottle there behind, and that prevents sticking. So you just turn the cheese and redress it, and then pop it back in the basket and press for 2 hours at 5 kilograms or 10 pounds. So another fairly light pressing. Make sure it's all centered so you don't get a lopsided cheese. There we go, 2 hours on the clock. So 2 hours later, remove the cheese from the press again. So the cheese has cooled down a bit so it won't stick to the cheesecloth, but still be gentle when you take it off. You'll see that the cheese is starting to form a rind, which is fantastic, as it should be. Quick taste test. So turn the cheese over and redress and press for 8 hours or overnight. And that's at 7.5 kilograms or 15 pounds of pressure. Fold the cloth over, put the follower on top, and apply your pressure. There we go. 8 hours on the clock. So the next day, remove the cheese from the press. Have your brining bucket handy. There we go. So the rind should be fully closed and nice looking cheese. So we're going to place it in the brine for 6 hours. And this will effectively salt the cheese. Now you can put the brine into the cheese cave at 13 Celsius during the brining time. So remove the cheese from the brine after the time has elapsed. And I've got a clean ripening box there that's been sanitised. But before I do pop it into the ripening box, I'm going to pat it dry with paper towel. It's quite damp. Because essentially this is a fresh pressed cheese, I'm just helping it along a little bit there, getting rid of all the brine that's on the surface. So place on a mat in a ripening box and store it overnight in the kitchen fridge if you're going to eat it the next day. So yesterday's cheese can be consumed the very next day, hence the name. But over to Gav for more tips on this cheese. So there you go, that's how you make yesterday's cheese. Quite simple, nice and easy, not too much fuss. And maturation, for me, I let it mature for about 4 days on Tracey's recommendations. You can eat it the next day after you've made it, but it improves with a couple of days aging after that. So all I did was keep it in the ripening box that I had, put it into the cheese cave, and it was dry when I put it in there, and it smells milky, nice looking cheese, very simple, a little bit like Bel Paese, if that cheese floats your boat. So nice, good looking cheese, a little bit lopsided because had a bit of trouble with the press. There we go, that's a bit better. Nice and simple. It has a little bit of a flange on the outside, but that's because of the pressing plate, the cheese follower, and yeah, it kind of made it go a bit funny. But because it's not a very big cheese, I only used 5 litres of milk. It's not as big as my regular cheeses. So let's just have a quick look at the inside. So I would say it's like semi-hard. So let's have a look. There we go. Now, I didn't press it hard enough by the looks of it because it has a bit of a big eye there. Same with this one. But that's a mechanical hole for not pressing it hard enough. So we'll just cut it into quarters. So a nice little stack. It's a nice smelling cheese. I don't know how much flavour it'll have, but it seems to be to me that it should be fairly edible. Remembering that I put lipase into it as well, which works on the fats, and it works a lot quicker on the fats and does a thing called lipolysis, which breaks down the fats. Anyway, so let's try a piece of it by itself. So it smells, it does smell very similar to Bel Paese. Nice. Salted just right. And yeah, it does. It tastes like cheese. It tastes like a, very similar to Buddha-Kaiser actually, if I remember rightly. It's fairly flexible. It does bend, as you can see, without cracking. And that's one of the natures of a thermophilic culture cheese, that it's quite flexible in its paste in the early days. And yeah, this is nice. Really good. A little bit like, I won't say it. I was going to say processed cheese, but it doesn't taste anything like processed cheese. This is the real deal. It's got a really nice mouthfeel. Definitely a lot of flavour for a 4-day-old cheese, that's for sure. So yeah, well worth making. It's really nice. A good table cheese. Now, Tracey says that it does melt, so you could use it as a melting cheese for cheese sandwiches. I don't think it's got the flavour for a cheese toasty. So it's very mild, but it's delicious nonetheless. So yeah, so good little early age cheese. If you want to make a cheese without too much fuss, you saw the process, fairly simple, and good for a beginner, that's for sure. So Yesterdaze Cheese is a hit as far as I'm concerned. Really nice little cheese. Any Alpine style cultures would be perfect for this cheese. So very edible, very tasty, and very, very fresh. So great little cheese. Well done, Tracey. Well, thanks for watching, Curtainers. If you want to buy cheese making supplies, we have them at littlegreenworkshops.com.au. You can pick up the cultures, the presses, the baskets, and what have you. We ship all over the world, of course. And if you haven't seen my ebooks or the spiral bound versions of those, go and have a look at the book section in the cheese making section of Little Green Workshops. Well, thank you for watching, Curd Nerds, and I'll see you next time.